I've spent 20 years working with equine behavior and specifically the science of behavior and the application of that to horses, donkeys and mules. I've also worked with the Donkey Sanctuary for that same amount of time in their behaviorists. So I've had thousands of donkeys to work with and to practice on. We have the Donkey Sanctuary has a farm with mules, about 150 mules on there. So lots and lots of opportunity to work with donkeys and mules around the world, working equids in Africa and South America, North America. As I said, I've been lucky enough to work a little bit in Australia, Cambodia. So I've been all over with various different types of equines. And everything I do is about the science of behavior. It's about applying that and matching not only donkey behavior, horse and mule behavior, but also the behavior of humans. And that's what I want to blend for you this evening. And we kind of base this around 3 questions about what methods work best for donkeys and hybrids. How can I assess to see if my training method is working? And what do I do if I lose my way during training? I think those are all pretty valid questions, and anybody who's been around equines, especially donkeys, for any length of time is going to have encountered those at some point. So it's a great opportunity, really. And all I'm going to do is just take one at a time, just go through them. You're all experienced donkey, mule owners, so you can tick off the ones that you're already kind of doing and thinking about, and maybe add in any others. I think there are, let's start with the methods and what methods work best for donkeys and hybrids. And I think this works for horses too. You know, I always say, there's an old saying that says, you can tell a horse what to do. You ask a donkey and you negotiate with a mule. And all of my training is at the mule standard. So there isn't a different way of training mules if you're using the science of behavior. It's about training to that level where you can work with mules and you can then apply that to donkeys and you can apply it to horses. So I think what often goes wrong is we take horses and horse training as the gold standard and then try and apply that to donkeys and mules. And my experience tells me that's the wrong way around. What we should be doing is saying, okay, how do we work with a donkey? How do we work with a mule? And then it makes it easier to work with a horse. So we're going back the other way. And that's really kind of an important aspect, because when I talk about what methods work best for horses, for donkeys and mules, not ones for horses. I think it's very easy for donkey owners to receive information from horse owners and look at horse training methods and try and apply those directly. Because of the flight nature of the horse, you know, you can take away their flight mechanism, with that being a pen or a rope or a head collar, and you can get them to comply. I'm not saying you should do it that way, but that's kind of what happens. But if you apply that to a donkey, the donkeys, because of their increased fight mechanism, is very likely to say, yeah, come on then, bring it on. And you've probably all experienced that. So the thought process for me is, what the first rule I have is, don't look at horse training methods and say, can I apply that to donkeys? Not in general or not in the entirety. There are obviously always bits you can take and learn from. But so really important to have that. I think training methods that take into account the animal's true nature and their individual character. Now that's the challenging thing, again, that ties in with not the horse methods, because donkeys, as you all know, are different, and horse training methods don't tend to take that into account, that donkeys require this stoic body language, that they have a higher tolerance to pain that they don't show, their fear response is much more muted, and the flight distance is reduced. And so people often, equine horse owners, horse trainers will often miss the signals that you will all know, that donkeys are nervous, fearful, apprehensive about situations, and hence the label that comes up about stubbornness. That's just people not understanding the true nature of donkeys and mules. And once you understand that, then you can understand where that label incorrectly comes from. So you want a method that takes into account what's your animal's individual learning style. Now, many of you in the poll there said you'd got more than 2 to 4, 5, 10 donkeys, more than 10. And what that means is you're working with 10 different learning styles. So when I talk about learning styles, what I'm talking about is the way that some animals will be like, no, I can't, no, I can't, no, I can't, no, I can't, or maybe. Others are like, no, I can't, no, I can't, oh, go on, I'll try. Others are like, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, I wish I hadn't. And you have to match your training to the nature of your individual animal. So how quickly you expose them to things, how slowly you expose them to things, how much time you give them to think. And you have to make that for the individual, just the same as all of us would learn slightly differently. So equines learn differently. So a method that fits all sizes and you just apply, this is what you do, is not taking into account the true nature of each individual animal and making it adaptable for that animal. Then you want a method that's based on science. It's really interesting that in many areas of our life, you know, you wouldn't go to a doctor that I've got 20 years experience. I've got no qualifications, but I've got 20 years experience. So yeah, do come into my surgery and I'll do some operations on you. And what we need to move away from in the equine world is from just purely experience, but also to qualifications and science-based knowledge that allows people to correctly apply learning theory. So when you're looking at a method, you want something that actually is based on science. It's probably less attractive. It doesn't make a great demonstration. It's not showy. It doesn't happen instantly, but it's scientifically proven to do the right things for your animal, and you will be able to know what is actually happening. So many videos online, the trainer will be talking about one thing, but when you look at it scientifically, you go, oh, that was just punishment. They won't call it punishment. Not many people put punishment videos up, but if you know about the science and you watch, you'll see what's actually happening. And that's why I always encourage everybody to engage with learning a bit about the science of behavior, because then you can really tell if what you're being told is the right thing. You need a method that always asks about pain and environmental problems first. So if you have a problem with your donkey, whether it be kicking, whether it be not loading, whether it not leading, the first thing that should always be asked in any method is pain the reason this behavior is occurring? And secondly, could it be environmental? And only after you've completed those two questions should you do the training bit or consider the training bit. So often we jump straight into training, you know, you ask for advice, people will tell you straight away what you do is this and what you do is that. Because of the science element, what we should always do is ask, are we sure that animal's not in pain? And that's not the cause. Go back to the stoic nature that you all know about. So often donkeys are in pain or discomfort and that gets missed. And we get on with training and we wonder why the behavior doesn't improve. So really important that you eliminate pain before you do anything else. And then environment causes a lot of stress. It can cause a lot of tension, anxiety. It can prevent the animal from fulfilling its normal behaviors. Donkeys get a lot better deal than horses often because, you know, they'll be out with companions. They'll probably have a free range. They'll have lots of things. They're not often stable on their own at night on limited diet. So we don't see so many of those stereotypies or problems that are caused by that type of environment. But it's important that you make sure environment isn't the underlying cause that's making your donkey anxious or nervous, and that's contributing to the behavior. When you're looking at your methods, you definitely want one that is about taking small steps. So one of the things that science tells us about shaping behavior, which is breaking a behavior down into very small steps. Now, everybody knows this, you all know this. You can't run before you can walk. You can't load your donkey before you can lead it. You can't pick up his feet before you can put the head collar on and stroke him. But it's the size of the steps that are really important. So lots of trainers, you know, obviously break it down and methods break it down, but the science will really broken it down and have tiny steps. Let me give you an example. If you're teaching a donkey to pick up his feet and you're stroking the leg, you've got down to the hoof, you've done all the right things. Most people, the next step, the logical next step is to pick up the foot, even for a brief second, try and get the animal to pick up his foot. When we're shaping behavior correctly and the method is breaking down the behavior into small enough steps, the actual steps that we would probably be taking is, okay, we're touching the hoof and doing all those sorts of things. But then what we'll do is just get the animal to shift his weight onto the other 3 feet, and then just pause. And that's a step. We can reward that. Maybe we'll get him to tip his foot onto the tip of his toes. So he's got his foot on the floor. You want him just to keep his foot on the floor, but just tip. So he's learning to take all his weight off the floor. That's 2 steps. We might just slide the foot around on the floor without taking it off. That's 3 steps. We might move it from left to right, just picking it up and putting it down. That's 4 steps. Before we might ask them to pick it up for 1 second, which is step number 5. So really good training and shaping is important in a method, because I've put 5 steps in the place of 1. And what that will do will give you more opportunities to tell the animal he's done the right thing, make more smaller mistakes, and therefore you will create less fear in learning and more opportunities for that animal to actually be able to understand what you want. So whenever you've got a method, whatever you're doing, excuse me, make sure that it incorporates these really small steps. Any method that is really going to benefit donkeys, and especially mules, should be based around positive reinforcement. So you want to be able to tell the animal, yes, that's what I wanted. And this is the tricky one for most people, because it's so easy for us to think of how we tell the animal, don't do this or don't do that. A lot of training methods are based around punishment, stopping behaviors, or the release of pressure, negative reinforcement, which is absolutely fine. That can be applied really nicely and be part of your training package. But we need to incorporate a way of telling the animal, yes, that's what I wanted, because that really motivates the animal, and it also is much clearer to the animal. If I tell you, don't do this, don't kick, but that doesn't tell the animal what any of the other 10,000 things it could do, it should be doing. Whereas if I can say, keep your foot calmly on the ground, and I can reward that behavior, it's very clear for the animal what it is we want them to do. So rewards can be scratches. With the scratches, if you get in there, every donkey's got a scratchy spot. It could be the inside of the ears, whatever works for your donkey or mule. And food rewards. Food rewards are absolutely fine if they are used properly and correctly. Food rewards don't cause equines to bite. It's the timing of the food reward that is the problem. So donkeys that come up and learn to mug and do all this and forage on us, and we give them a piece of food because we love them and think they're gorgeous, that's what they learn to do. So if we just use food for the correct behaviors, and we use it for standing still and keeping their head off us and doing all the things we want. I've used food for 20 years and it has never been a problem. It's never resulted in a biting animal, but it has to be used correctly. But it's a very powerful motivator. Food, if you want to warm things up for leading, for doing really more active behaviors, is really good. But if you want to slow a behavior down, like standing still and being patient, then probably scratches are a more effective reward. But your method should be reflecting this. Ideally, I always advise people to have a written plan. How many of you, just a quick yes or no in the chat box, when you're training your donkeys, how many of you use a written plan? Yes or no? Everybody just shake your heads or nod if you don't want to type, but just give me some idea. Nah, absolutely. Most people do not use a written shaping plan. What they do is they get this, well, we're going to do this, I think I know what's going to happen. So my shaping plan for picking up feet has around 100 steps in it. And my argument is you can't keep 100 steps in your head and know which order they're in and where they're going and change and all that sort of thing. And it's normal. Across the equine community, most people don't have a written plan. The plan provides direction, it provides you with real consistency, it allows gaps in training, it allows you to reward yourself for progress, it allows you to go back down the shaping plan and come back up again when there's an issue. I would strongly urge anybody who is training an equine of any description, whether that's a new behavior or undoing a behavior, to get a written plan so that you can break the behavior down. You get a lot of confidence. Now, some people say, yes, Ben, but I don't like a written plan because I need to be able to feel, and it doesn't, I don't want to take out that element of being able to just find my way and be sort of flexible with my donkey's training. It's not set in stone. A written plan isn't set in stone. It doesn't have to be a slave to it. But when you know what steps are coming, because you've looked at it and you can see, right, I'm on step 5 and I know what step 6, 7 and 8 are, you can go out with your donkey and you don't have to be worrying about step 27 or thinking, what about this or what about that? You can be in the moment, which is really important, because you know exactly where you're going and what you're doing. So one tip I would always give people, top tip, get a written shaping plan in place when you're doing training. And I think the 2 final tips I'd talk about with the methods that work best for donkeys and hybrids are really about focus on your training that builds and puts the relationship first. So we so often with behavioral issues or trying to do training, we focus on the issue, we focus on the training, we focus on the behavior, and we try and get things fixed, or we try and get things learned. I would always say, look, start by working on the relationship. Have that donkey wanting to be with you, have that donkey enjoying the interaction, have that training that adds to your relationship, and then it will be so much easier to fix the problem or to bring in the training. So whatever you're doing should be adding to that relationship that you already have with that animal, or building it if that's necessary. The other thing, and the final thing, is this is the most important aspect, is whatever training you choose, it really needs to resonate with who you are and what you want your relationship to be with your donkeys. We often start out training and take a method and do things and then end up somewhere we maybe didn't want to be. I would argue the best way to be is to think about, what do I want my relationship to be with my donkey? How do I want them to behave? And then find a method that fits and will create that for you. So, so often I speak to owners across the world over the last 20 years when people have been told by trainers, right, you've got to be more dominant, you've got to be more confident, you've got to show them who's boss. And those people go, I'm not really that person. I'm not a particularly strong person, or I'm 65 and I don't have all that strength. So what do? So find a method or training that resonates with your values and your principles, because that is the only way you're going to follow it. If you have something that conflicts and you're just doing it because a trainer tells you to, it's going to be really hard to keep that going. So just think about finding something that resonates with you.